This is the Art for Wellbeing project for 1A Arts, and this is a new project. It is a 10-week long project based on the idea of art for wellbeing. In the project, participants will be creating artworks of their own, responding to certain themes around the idea of self-expression and well-being. In the project, we will be presenting these slideshows that will talk about certain elements of art and certain themes within them, and also teaching some practical tips and advice on painting, mainly for beginners and for people who have got a little bit more practice. Each week I'll be creating a slideshow, and in the slideshow it will be looking at different artists, how they've used arts, how they've used certain techniques, what some paintings mean, and how we can do interpretations of some of these artworks. So the first slideshow is called What is Art For? Now, in this diagram here, I've actually chosen what art means to me. So with art in the centre, I've looked at all of the elements that make art important to me. Spirituality, self-expression, inspiration, emotional, life experience, a way of life, identity, a sense of place. Each artist will be different, and art means different things to them. I've always been interested in art, but I really embraced it after a difficult time in my life and built a sense of purpose around it. It gave me a great outlet for self-expression, and it became a way of life. Everything I look at now is seen through that lens of how it can be interpreted through art and in art. So we'll move on here. So art can be many things, but for our purposes here, very simply, art is self-expression. In these slideshows, we're going to look at different themes in art, and as participants in the project, you will be asked to respond to some of these themes, whether during the project or in your own time. And you can use any medium to do this. We'll be focusing mainly on painting because that's something I know well. But we're going to be looking at these themes and how we can use them and relate to them in our own work and our own creative journey. One of these themes is identity. And identity is a very important theme in art because it has so many elements to it. Some of those elements are family, those we know best, those around us. The self. There's so many layers to who we are. Portrait, and that's a self-portrait or a portrait of others. Human experience, or the human experience, our experience, the experience of others. It can also be biographical. Others, so again that relates to other people, other people's experience, and society. I've chosen for this slide Frida Kahlo, who was very autobiographical in her painting, created many self-portraits with symbols in them from her life, from both her waking life and her dream life too. They're always amazing to look at because you see so many different elements of her psychology, her emotion, even her spirituality and her relationships in life. We're going to look at a few different expressions of identity here. This is Pablo Picasso. Now, Pablo Picasso could paint like a classical painter, but his preferred way of expressing himself was through these raw drawings. They're so elemental in how they're expressed. There's something primal, there's something not rushed, I was about to say rushed, but something urgent about what he's created here. So again, things don't have to be perfect. It's about self-expression. Vincent van Gogh here. It is a very interesting painting. I see it as a self-portrait. There are many different ways of seeing it. But in this, Vincent van Gogh has he's painted his chair with his tobacco and pipe on the chair. Now this is his studio chair. The person that's missing from the painting is the subject of the painting, Vincent. So he is painting the picture whilst being absent from it. However, it comes to symbolise him. It's his chair, it's his pipe, it's his tobacco in his space. It's a very interesting painting to think about and look at. Here we have Jenny Saville. So Jenny Saville still paints today, and she is excellent at self-portraits, but in them you see the complexity of who she is. You see her insecurities coming out. You see this study of herself, often as a very self-conscious sitter for her portraits. Very intriguing stuff, and I recommend having a look. So we're going to move on to our next theme here, which is a sense of place. And in this, you have things like landscape, environment, nature, weather, atmosphere, experience, and feeling. This particular theme is very important to me, as I'm a landscape painter, but I also just love the atmosphere of places. You know, even if it's interior, exterior, if it's in a city or in the countryside, wherever, it's very important. In this first painting here, which is by Joan Eardley, who was a 20th century Scottish painter, you can see that it's a almost abstract painting, semi-abstract painting. And she's used textures and raw colours to really create what to me looks like an autumn or late summer wheat field. You could see the landscape there, but so much is put into that emotional response to the place rather than a perfect depiction of it. Here too we have Paul Cézanne, another landscape painter. Now this is in Provence, and the mountain in the background is a subject which Cézanne painted almost on a daily basis. Whether it's through the trees or from his house, different views of it in different light, different temperatures, different times of year. It's that feeling of a sense of place and intimacy with the place that someone gets to know and paints and expresses themselves. This here is painted on Hampstead Heath. It's John Constable, very famous English painter who was the painter of clouds. Many people know him for his more well-known paintings like The Hayway, but I'm fascinated by these cloud studies. It's a real sense of place and intimacy with the clouds, a different light with the skies. And this, of course, even though you can't see the heath in there, it was at a time before you could see the skyscrapers and the Gherkin. Occasionally you will see St Paul's Cathedral in the distance. The next theme is observation. Again, this is a really interesting theme because the scope of it is vast. In observation, you have things like still life, contemplation, to meditate upon, to witness an impression of something, experience, or to study something. In the painting, we have a really cute looking cat there and a still life. This is by an artist called Mary Fedden, another 20th century, late 20th century painter. And she painted mainly still lifes and domestic scenes using pared down colours, very bright, lovely colours, pared down forms. Really a joy to look at. And again, it's about this idea of observation, of looking, meditating upon. This is Pierre Bonnard. So Bonnard was, again, a painter that took a lot of time to observe his surroundings. Many interiors, landscapes, but it's his still lifes and interiors which are particularly interesting. It shows really that art can be created anywhere. All it takes is that extra special look, that way of seeing things, of bearing witness to things and taking your time to capture their presence. This is Giorgio Morandi, Italian artist. Now, Morandi painted the same vessels, jars, jugs, bottles. He had a huge collection of them, but he, apart from doing a few landscapes, he actually painted these daily, and the variety and the nuance within the compositions and the colours, the light, the temperature, is just absolutely incredible. So again, it's that meditation upon simple forms, observation. Next theme we move on to is abstract. So abstract is, amongst other things, expressive, colour, material, spirituality, emotion, experience and feeling. Abstract art says things without relying on figurative narratives or details to express them. It's often seen as the purest form of art, an art that really gets to the crux of self-expression, very much like poetry is to a novel. Abstract painting or abstract art can really bring it down to its raw elements. Here we have a huge painting by Helen Frankenthaler. I think that's how you pronounce her name. But really here she's looking at the simplest of forms, but colour, deep colour and emotion in there. These are often called colour field paintings. Helen was a practitioner as part of the abstract expressionist school or movement in the 1950s and 60s. She was what's called second generation. And really it was about that idea of using colour, form, abstraction to express depth and clarity. Here is a British painter who died a couple of years ago called Howard Hodgkin. Howard Hodgkin really is a poet with paint. A lot of his paintings are based on personal interactions, things that happened during his day, places he's visited. But when you look at them, you wouldn't see that. You can't see, I think, some, for example, would be called, a cafe scene, for example. It's an abstract painting, but Howard Hodgkin puts real emotion into those colours and brushstrokes and creates such depth. They are visual poems. He's one of my favourite abstract painters. Here we have Sandra Blow. Now Sandra Blow was a Cornish or St Ives painter, and again here she's using collage, painted collage, to create those simple forms, that simplicity of colour, shape, composition and line, a pure form of expression. In this project I'm going to choose a featured artist each week that relates to some of the themes. So this week's featured artist is Georgia O'Keeffe. So Georgia O'Keeffe is very interesting in how she paints, the location of where she paints, and the beauty and simplicity in many ways of her works. So in this quote, Georgia O'Keeffe says, "I found I could say things with colour and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I had no words for." It's really quite an interesting statement that art to her is a form of communication. Words can't express what colour and shapes can express for her. Georgia O'Keeffe moved down to, I think she's from New York originally, she moved down to New Mexico and painted what was around her. So here you see New Mexico landscape, beautiful, open, colourful, but as she's painted it, not over complicated landscape. Georgia O'Keeffe is very famous for her flowers. Huge, beautiful flowers. There was an exhibition at the Tate Modern a few years ago. Again, she's not overcomplicating these flowers. She's really making them speak their primal truth. Here you see a snail shell, which again has a simple beauty to it. And here is a gorgeous, whether it's a sunrise or a sunset, very symbolic, reminds me of lots of old religious paintings. Here's some more beautiful flowers. Again, look at how she's used the colour to create a real sense of those flowers. You could almost touch them. You could feel their texture, a delicate texture. And here's a mountainscape or hillscape reflected in the water. And another beautiful sunrise, or whether it's a sun shining over the sea or over some hills. Again, we can interpret art in however we want to see it. And this is why I often, when I do these slideshows, I don't often put a title for the artwork in there. So that is the end of the slideshow. Our project over the next 10 weeks, whether you're taking part in Zoom or you're following along with this video and taking part of yourself, our project is to respond to some of the themes or one of the themes and ideas within the slideshow. It could be an interpretation of an artist's work or something else that you have in mind. You can respond through poetry, painting, collage, video, photography, anything. There's no rules within art. Again, I've chosen painting because I know more about it, but really this is an open project. So choose one of those themes or create your own and create a work of art or a series of works of art over 10 weeks. I'll just go over some of those themes again. So our themes are identity, a sense of place, observation and abstract. So that's for you to choose. On the Zoom group, we chose one of the works by Georgia O'Keeffe. It was this one, and we all done a version of it. You can choose to do that if you want, but you're also free to do any of the other artworks or create your own. With art, as with this project, everything is open and everything is possible. Thank you for watching.